Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Rubenstein. Today is March 5th, 2025, and this is the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. Another day has passed. There's no ceasefire with Hamas and Gaza in effect, and Hamas continues to hold Israeli hostages and make outrageous demands. It's possible that the war could intensify at any moment. The IDF has a new chief of staff as of today. Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir has replaced Herzi Halevi as chief of staff. Zamir said, "The task which I am receiving today is clear: lead the IDF to victory." Here's something that's hard to believe. The UN Secretary General has demanded that Israel facilitate the transfer of food and supplies to the Hamas government of Gaza, so that the Hamas government of Gaza can tax the imported goods and use the revenue to pay the Hamas terrorist army, which is holding hostages and promising to fight Israel until Israel is destroyed. Those weren't the Secretary General's exact words, obviously, but it is an accurate description of the meaning of what he said. This is what he tweeted: "Humanitarian aid is not negotiable. In Gaza, it must flow without impediment. The response needs to be adequately funded, and civilians, including humanitarians, must be protected. We have proven that with access, the UN coordinated response can deliver the aid that people need." You'll notice a word that he does not use. The word is Hamas. The reality in Gaza is that Hamas is the government of Gaza. Any food and supplies that are sent to Gaza are sent to the Hamas government, which taxes the food and supplies. What do you think Hamas is doing with this revenue? It pays its fighters. It pays the young boys that it trains to be new fighters. It pays the Hamas terrorists and their families who are holding hostages in or under their homes. Hamas sees the hostages it is holding as an asset. We won't get any closer to ending the war until Hamas sees the hostages as a liability and releases them. Hamas makes sure to take all the food and supplies that it needs for its own fighters, and then turns over the rest to merchants who are connected to Hamas. Hamas controls everything in Gaza because Hamas is the government of Gaza. There is no independent aid distribution effort in Gaza, and there never was. All outside aid organizations relied on Hamas for security. If Hamas is providing security, then Hamas is getting its cut one way or another. Israel has no legal obligation to continue supplying its enemies. During phase 1 of the hostage ransom payment, Israel facilitated the transfer of 4,200 trucks per week into Gaza. A lot of food and supplies have gone in. But now Hamas refuses to budge. It won't leave power, and it won't release hostages. I don't think Israel will make more ransom payments until Hamas starts releasing more hostages. Let's take some questions from people watching on our social media platforms.
Thank you, Daniel. Our first question comes from Instagram stories. IDF published a statement saying that the Israeli Air Force targeted a Hezbollah terrorist in Lebanon yesterday. Does this mean that there is no ceasefire with Hezbollah anymore?
I saw this statement from the IDF. It mentioned a name, Khadir Said Hashem, who was the commander of the naval unit in Hezbollah Special Forces. That's the Radwan unit of Hezbollah. This guy was smuggling weapons. So he's smuggling weapons. He's helping Hezbollah rearm. That is a threat to the state of Israel. And it is a violation of the ceasefire agreement between the government of Israel and Lebanon, which says that Hezbollah must disarm. Hezbollah has not disarmed. The Lebanese government has not disarmed it. The UN has not helped. Nobody has helped. Hezbollah has not disarmed. This time, Israel's not going to wait around for other people to disarm Hezbollah. If Hezbollah is armed, it's a violation, and Israel will enforce violations. Hezbollah will not be allowed to rearm and become a terrorist army again on Israel's border, threatening to do what Hamas did on October 7th.
Thank you. Our next question comes from X. The Qatari government has issued a statement slamming Israel's Shin Bet security agency for suggesting that aid from Qatar to Gaza was partially responsible for the October 7th massacre. What do you make of this?
It seems that the government of Qatar never misses an opportunity to condemn Israel, and the government of Qatar has never once taken the opportunity to condemn Hamas. This is another opportunity for Qatar to condemn Israel, that the Shin Bet has issued its report about what went wrong that led to the October 7th massacre, and one of the factors was the amount of Qatari money that was going into Gaza. Qatar is, of course, right that this money had Israel's blessing, but it seems to have been a curse rather than a blessing, because this money from Qatar was happy to give it to Gaza so that Hamas would not have to worry about taking care of the people in Gaza, and Hamas could devote its resources to building its military. We have to remember that on October the 7th, while the massacre was ongoing, Qatar condemned Israel, and Qatar said Israel was solely responsible for the ongoing massacre. Qatar has played the role of Hamas's agent. It pretends that it is a neutral mediator. It is Hamas's agent. And I think we need more pressure, not just on Hamas, but also on Hamas's agent, Qatar, so that Qatar will send Hamas the message that the hostages need to come home. The war needs to end with Hamas out of power in Gaza.
Thank you. Our next question comes from YouTube. Do you think the American administration recognizes Qatar's double game? And if yes, why do they not call Qatar out on it?
This is a good question. I think the United States does understand the role that Qatar is playing, but we are in a very complicated geopolitical reality in the Middle East, where Iran is the major threat in the Middle East, and Qatar is an extreme nuisance that is prolonging this war. But we have to keep our eye also on the fact that this war is not just against Hamas in Gaza, but it's against the Iranian regime and its proxy armies throughout the Middle East. And the United States is playing a critical role in rolling back Iranian aggression in the Middle East. The President of the United States has called for maximum pressure on the Iranian regime, and it looks like he is seeking maximum pressure. The focus of the United States is on the Iranian regime. The focus of Israel, its priority is the Iranian regime. Qatar is a complicated knot to untangle. That's why I'm here telling the truth every day about Qatar, so that more people will get the message and we can find a way out of this mess.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Ronnie on YouTube. Why did Israel send aid to Gaza for 17 months in the first place?
Israel made a point of saying that its war is against Hamas and not the people of Gaza. And Israel made a point of allowing international aid organizations, even UNRWA, World Food Program, many other organizations participated in the sending of humanitarian aid into Gaza. In the beginning of the war in October 2023, Israel called on everyone in northern Gaza to evacuate their homes. That's about 1 million people that Israel called on to evacuate their homes in northern Gaza and move south. When they moved south, humanitarian aid was waiting for them there in designated zones. So Israel had no desire to cause harm to anyone outside of the Hamas terrorist army, and the Hamas terrorist army took advantage of this reality and forced people into a situation where they did not receive the necessary aid. At the same time, Israel was hoping that hostages would receive the humanitarian aid that went into Gaza. We've all seen the videos of the hostages coming out of Hamas captivity, being released at these public parades, and the hostages were clearly starving. Hamas starves the hostages. The food that Israel is sending in is taken by Hamas and not given to the hostages. So the reality has changed. The calculations have changed. We need Hamas to feel more pressure than it's been feeling, so it will release the hostages and end the war.
Thank you. This is our final question from Instagram. What do you think about the Arab countries' Gaza plan?
I just saw that this plan was published today, and I saw that it's 106 pages long. So forgive me, I haven't read it yet, but it's my understanding, based on the limited amount that I have read about it and what I've seen reported about it, is that this is a plan for rebuilding Gaza, but it's a plan for rebuilding Gaza while Hamas is still in power in Gaza. It doesn't take into account the fact that Hamas is the government of Gaza. Gaza cannot be rebuilt while Hamas remains the government of Gaza. If there is a massive entry of building supplies, cement, concrete, steel, big machines, what do you think Hamas is going to use it for? Hamas is going to use it to rebuild its military infrastructure. We have seen this after previous wars with Hamas in 2009, 2012, 2014, 2021. Hamas uses all of the resources available to it to rebuild its military infrastructure, and we cannot allow a reality where Gaza gets rebuilt and Hamas is the chief beneficiary. That would not make sense. But if Hamas is not the government of Gaza, then perhaps there is something to talk about. That's all the time we have for questions.